Good morning, Prime Minister.
Morning, good to see you.
Kamal Santa Maria is my name. Come take a seat, please. Pleasure to have you with us.
Good to be here. Let me just de-phone.
Yes, quite.
The first choice of most refugees, of course, is to go home. And until that is possible, I think the second choice of most refugees is to try and live and work in one of the neighbouring states. And I think that Jordan and Lebanon and Turkey have obviously done an amazing job at hosting so many refugees, and it's right that we support them with aid as we're doing. But we've got a new plan here, which is to try and help encourage those states to allow the refugees to work. And in Jordan, it's a very exciting plan because it's a combination of international donors and money to support Jordan with new enterprise zones in the north of the country where people can work, and then making sure that Europe changes its tariffs and its rules of origin so that those businesses that would invest in those enterprise zones will see it as advantageous. So I think it's a very inventive and creative plan, and full credit to the Jordanians for trying to make it work.
Well, this is what I was going to ask you. Why Jordan in particular?
Well, I think Jordan has got particular pressure because of the number of refugees, and I think they're very creative in thinking, look, we want to be a good host to these people. We don't want to disadvantage our own people in terms of work, but we recognise that these refugees would like to work. One of the reasons I think so many have left to come to Europe is they've run out of money. Many sometimes have been back into Syria to get all the resources they have. They've sold that property, they've run out of money, and so they have to move. And Jordan, I think, has got a very innovative approach, and I hope others will follow.
On the subject of taking in refugees, this is in Europe and United Kingdom included, obviously, I've been speaking to different charities, Oxfam, Save the Children, Amnesty, and what they seem to keep saying is that Europe could do more. It could take in more refugees, and it isn't. And that what it's doing is hiding behind some sort of protectionism, that we need to look after our own people first before we start taking in refugees. How do you respond to that?
Well, I think that I can answer for what Britain is doing because we've taken our own approach. We've said that we'll take 20,000 refugees from the Syrian refugee camps in Jordan, Lebanon and Turkey. So we don't want to provide an extra pull factor into Europe. We think it's right, actually, to take the most vulnerable from those camps. We said we'd resettle 1,000 by Christmas, and we did that. I think, look, the pressure on Europe here is very great of just the movement of people into Europe and the support that they require. And it's better if you can meet people's needs in the region, because, as I've said, their first choice is actually, I think, to return home to Syria as soon as they can.
On the peace talk side of things, we've got, well, those talks supposed to start on Monday in Geneva. I was speaking to Staffan de Mistura, the UN Special Envoy. He said he still hadn't even sent the invites out. Do you have any optimism whatsoever for these talks?
Well, it is, I think one has to be positive and stay optimistic. And John Kerry, all credit to him, the US Secretary of State, has been an absolute dynamo behind trying to make these talks work. The idea is simple. We need to get round the table representatives of the regime in Syria, even though many of us have, huge misgivings about what that regime has done. We need to get them round the table with the legitimate opposition leaders, the moderate opposition. And that's the aim. I think it could still take place, but it's going to mean some give and take on both sides.
And not just the Syrian players, the international players with a stake in it as well. I'm referring to Russia here. For you, does what's happened with the report into the death of Alexander Litvinenko change how you will deal with Russia? Because you still need to deal with Russia when it comes to Syria.
There's no doubt that when it comes to Syria, we need all of the players, whether it's Saudi Arabia or Iran or Russia. Everyone needs to be involved. Now, obviously, we have real difficulties with our relationship with Russia because of what has happened. And it's right that we take the action we announced yesterday. But when it comes to Syria, difficult as it is, we have to discuss this issue with them because, the crisis in Syria will only be solved when all of the players recognise that it's in their interest to have a settlement.
Just a couple of other topics I want to move on to. One is the economy. We are at the World Economic Forum. In the time we've been here, we've seen oil prices falling further. We've seen Asian markets falling and then recovering again. There is a threat, from what economists tell me, of a real second recession here. Now, in fact, one economist said that there was too much austerity in Europe, and what it did is took away the momentum. And now that there's these new pressures of falling markets and falling oil prices, there's no way to bring that momentum back again. And you know, this is a fair point. How does Europe, and indeed the rest of the world, find that momentum again?
Well, there are turbulent times on the markets. There are, and that's undeniable. I think that highlights the need for resilience and for having clear plans to get deficits down and to manage our economies responsibly and to sticking to those plans. But I think if you look at the IMF or other forecasts, they're forecasting global growth this year. The oil price, the low oil price actually will help many industrial economies in Europe to have low inflation and growth in manufacturing and other areas. So I think sometimes people can overinterpret what's happening in the markets rather than looking at the fundamentals. I'm not in any way complacent. We live in a difficult and dangerous world. There are many economic threats out there. The most important thing for governments to do is to stick to their plans and to manage economies responsibly.
No, I don't disagree with you, because markets can fluctuate almost hour to hour sometimes. But the price of oil, this is a true concern. We've seen it keep going down, and we know the knock-on effect and the impact that has all over the world.
Well, of course, that's the case. I mean, we're an oil producer. We see the difficulties it's causing for the North Sea oil industry and for oil companies, and that has led to difficulties in parts of my country, in Aberdeen, for instance. But you know, a low oil price overall actually can benefit economies like Britain, because it reduced businesses' costs. It means that consumers are getting a boost in terms of every time they fill up their car. So, you know, we complained about a high oil price, and now we're going to complain about a low oil price. I think we have to the main thing is to stick to the fundamentals of sound economic management. Get your deficits down, make your economies competitive, sign trade deals with the fastest growing parts of the world, make sure that your country is a good one for business to invest and grow in. And what we're seeing in Britain, of course, you know, there are difficult issues we have to confront, but we've got a record number of people in work. We've just seen figures yesterday to show that our exports of motor vehicles, for instance, are at record levels. We grew over 2% last year, forecast to grow over 2% this year. If we stick to the plan, we can deliver what all governments want to deliver, which is economic security for families in our country.
Just a final question on Europe, the EU referendum, which Britain will eventually hold. You're talking to business people here in Davos about it. What are you telling them?
Well, my aim is to get people to look at the size of the prize. If Britain can achieve what we want to achieve, which is reform in Europe and reform that settle Britain's concerns about Europe, and then securing Britain's place in that reformed European Union, that is a great prize. We can have what I call the best of both worlds. You know, we'll be in a single market, which is good for our business and economy and jobs, but we won't be part of a single currency. We will have the freedom to move around Europe, but we'll keep our borders in place because it's vital for our economic security. And if I'm successful, we'll be out of a sense of a sort of ever closer political union, which Britain's never wanted, but we'll be there for cooperation and working together on issues that clearly matter to Europe, whether that is security or combating terrorism or the importance of climate change, making sure we make strong foreign policy steps together as we have over, for instance, the Iran oil sanctions. So I think there is a very strong future for Britain and for Europe if we can get this right. And that's a big prize. That's worth fighting for.
Prime Minister, pleasure talking to you. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.